Cenk Uygur joins us back at our desk this morning. He's the founder and CEO of the host of the Young Turks. First, remind viewers who the Young Turks are, what your politics are.
Yeah, we're the largest online news show, and we are progressive and unapologetically so, as you'll see in this upcoming hour. We've got about 250 million views a month, about 50 million unique viewers. And very happy to say that millennial and Gen Z generations are massively progressive along with us.
Joining us this morning now, less than 18 months before election 2020. How crowded is the progressive lane in the Democratic primary field?
Not crowded enough. So there are arguably 2 to 3 progressive candidates, depending on obviously how you define it. And I would say the other 15 or so are pretty solidly in the establishment lane.
How do you define it?
Progressive is someone who cares about the things that we've been talking about, that Bernie Sanders has brought up and AOC has brought up. Medicare for all. Progressive also believe in Green New Deal, getting money out of politics. It's easy to say things like get money out of politics, but do you really mean it? Do you believe in an amendment? Do you believe in a convention to get it out? And these days, everybody says, oh, I'm for Medicare for all, and then you press them on it, and it turns out, no, not really. They're for a public option or some sort of middle ground. So, well, that makes you less progressive. But the reason I brought up money in politics first is because if you're taking corporate PAC money or taking giant donors on a regular basis, then you're beholden to those people. And so it's harder to trust you. So those are all defining features.
You talk about Bernie Sanders. We've talked about Bernie Sanders in the past and your support for some of his policies in the past. Are you officially endorsing, supporting Bernie Sanders in 2020?
No. I tell the audience to keep an open mind, and Bernie Sanders is a wonderful progressive. I'd be thrilled to endorse him. I think he has an excellent chance in the general election. But Elizabeth Warren is also an excellent candidate, and there are a couple others that really merit consideration. And in fact, when we started, I mean, we were huge backers of Beto O'Rourke against Ted Cruz, and Mayor Pete Buttigieg sounded super interesting, and I love how smart he is. But it's our job to dive in and find out more about these candidates. And so when you find out more, you realize a lot of them have more conservative credentials than you would imagine.
And what are you specifically concerned about, and who are you specifically concerned about?
So Beto started out by saying, no corporate PAC money, even before the Just Democrats did. So world of credit to him on that. But he also took a no fossil fuel pledge, and it turns out he did take money from fossil fuel executives. And now he says, yeah, I'm going to keep on taking that money. Well, okay, that's troubling when you break a pledge, and especially on behalf of corporate donors. And then he said that he was definitely for Medicare for all. And in the middle of the race against Ted Cruz, and maybe this is why he lost, all of a sudden panic, Democratic Washington consultants, and all of a sudden he's not for Medicare for all. Well, that's not that interesting. So, and Mayor Pete, the more you read into it, the more he says, well, progressive policies. I don't really want to talk about that. I want to talk about values. That's political talk for I'm not going to do anything.
Mayor Pete also talking about Bernie Sanders in a recent New York Times piece. Here's what he had to say. The piece saying, Mr. Buttigieg said that Mr. Sanders' left-wing proposals were no longer as provocative as back in 2016, expressed skepticism that a self-described democratic socialist in his late 70s could win a general election. Quote, I have a hard time seeing the coalition ultimately coming together there, is what he's quoted as saying.
Yeah, see, that's a terrible quote. And so he can kiss a lot of progressive votes goodbye with that kind of nonsense talk, because he says, oh, well, his left-wing proposals. Hey, then what are you? If you're not left-wing, why are you in our primary? So that's a terrible answer. And then he goes on to say, well, they were novel in 2016, but their novelty is worn off. You know what that means, John? That means, oh, I would have done it as a political gimmick, and it would have been novel. What do you mean it's worn off? Do we have Medicare for all? Do we have Green New Deal? We don't have any of those things. So that means, oh, I thought it was a cute little parlor trick, and if I'm president, I'm definitely not going to do those things. So, well, you know, you could take a long walk off of a short political dock there.
Cenk Uygur with us until 9 o'clock Eastern this morning, asking you to call in, join the conversation. Democrats 202-748-8000, Republicans 202-748-8001. Independence, 202-748-8002. We should tell viewers why you're with us this morning. You were in town last night, but you didn't actually attend the White House Correspondents' Dinner. What were you attending? Yeah,
the Young Turks every year hold a watchdog correspondence dinner right across the street at the rooftop, and a lot of young reporters, producers, and people who are not necessarily progressive, but actually care to do watchdog journalism. So holding the powerful accountable. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the other room, not so much. So in the Trump days, they appear to be better because Trump is such a monstrosity that it would be weird not to hold him accountable in some ways, as he brazenly lies to you every single day and says you're the enemy of the people. So yeah, a little journalism broke out in this town, but generally they're very beholden to power.
Let's you chat with a few of our callers this morning. Tyrone's up first from New York City, Democrat. Good morning.
Hello, how you doing, Jake? It's good to speak to you. I listen to your show all the time, and I enjoy it thoroughly. My fear is that the media puts us in this false sense of security. We don't pay attention to the fact that Trump is bad, yes, but we can get worse. We can have a President Sean Hannity, a President Ann Coulter, a President Rush Limbaugh, because we keep thinking that we can't get any worse than Donald Trump, and then we don't stand up against him, and we keep believing that he is, he's the worst that we can get. They keep pushing back against progressive ideas, and I think that's a forward idea that we're going towards the future when we're dealing with the progressive way of running this country.
Tyrone, who can beat President Trump in 2020? Who do you think would be the best candidate for Democrats to put up?
I'm still with Bernie. I love Elizabeth Warren, but she's not polling well or what have you. I still feel Elizabeth Warren. I would love for Pete just to beat him, so that to say that somebody that's gay beat Donald Trump, he couldn't stand it. That would challenge his manhood to no end. But that would just be a thing of getting back at him.
It's Tyrone in New York. Cenk Uygur.
Yeah, well, look, I would love it if anybody beat him on the Democratic side. Obviously, the more progressive, the better. But every one of them drive him crazy. You crazy? I mean, if Elizabeth Warren beat Donald Trump, do you know how much he would lose his mind? If Bernie Sanders beat him, he'd be like, well, I don't understand it. How is this socialist winning? Well, because he's smart and he actually cares about the American people, and you're a liar, and you said things on the campaign trail that you never intended to do because you're a typical sorry, corrupt politician. So are you kidding me? That night when we defeat Donald Trump, if it's him in the election, it's going to be one of the greatest nights we've ever had. And it's, at this point, we're in excellent shape to do that. He's got 49% of the country saying they will definitely vote against him. He's a paper tiger.
Tyrone, the caller just now talked about polling. This is the latest from the Washington Post, their ABC Washington Post poll that was in the field last week. Some 54% of Democrats polled have no preference right now. Of those who do, 13% supporting Joe Biden, 9% Bernie Sanders, 5% Mayor Pete, Kamala Harris 4%, Elizabeth Warren 4%, Beto O'Rourke at 3%, and so on down through the other dozen or so candidates after that. Does any of that polling matter at this point?
Yes, some of it matters and some of it doesn't. So Joe Biden's polling doesn't matter because it's incredibly soft. People like him based on name recognition and the fact that he was in the Obama administration. But they've yet to see his record. And when they see the record, generally speaking, for Joe Biden in presidential elections, he slides down, and usually precipitously. But for Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, I can't imagine that you're in that camp today and thinking that, well, if I like Bernie Sanders, maybe I'll like Joe Biden. That is unlikely. So his numbers are less movable than Biden's are.
You mentioned Joe Biden. Let's remind viewers of Biden's presidential announcement last week. Here's 1 minute from that about 3.5-minute video.
He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. Very fine people on both sides? With those words, the President of the United States assigned a moral equivalence between those spreading hate and those with the courage to stand against it. And in that moment, I knew the threat to this nation was unlike any I had ever seen in my lifetime. I wrote at the time that we're in the battle for the soul of this nation.
Thoughts on the tone of that announcement and where Joe Biden decided to go to not introduce, but sort of reintroduce?
Yeah, look, I didn't mind that announcement at all, and I think he's right to point out that at Charlottesville, Donald Trump showed what a monster he was. They chanted, "The Jews will not replace us," and he said there are very fine people on that side. We're still having a conversation about whether this guy has any morality, any decency at all. If it was any other politician except the most powerful man on earth, they'd be censured, there'd be resolutions against them, and probably driven out of this town. But we've gotten used to him being such a terrible, immoral person. But they killed somebody in Charlottesville, and then he doubled down after Biden's comments and said, yeah, they were very fine. He said, I said it perfectly. So, Donald Trump, I'd like to ask you, can you name the very fine Nazis in Charlottesville? It's a fair request. He said there's very fine people in the side of the people who chanted blood and soil and other Nazi chants. So which of the Nazis were very fine people? I don't know. You probably follow them on Twitter, so you tell us.
Let you chat with a few more callers. Jean is in Waldoboro, Maine, a Republican. Good morning.
Good morning. I want to talk about the Green New Deal, but I also would like to say about this comment on Charlottesville, there were a lot of citizens, just ordinary citizens, who liked their town and liked that statue, who did not want to see the statue torn down. And they had nothing to do with either side. They just wanted to keep their town the same and keep their history the same.
Nonsense. So, look, first of all, if you went to a rally accidentally where they were chanting "the Jews will not replace us" with torches, at least then you should have the decency to come out and go, wait, man, I am not with those people. Okay, so I took a left when I should have taken a right or whatever it is. If you still say there are good people who chanted that and they were like, oh yeah, so what? I was next to a bunch of Nazis. What's the big deal? Then you're a terrible person. I'll go further. Oh, they just wanted to protect their history and their heritage with Robert E. Lee statue. The same excuse that Donald Trump made. Robert E. Lee, also terrible, immoral, horrific person. You know what he was? He was a traitor to America. And they offered him to be the head of the Union Army. And he said, no, instead I will commit treason against America. This country has not had a bigger traitor than Robert E. Lee. He killed way more people than Osama bin Laden and more than the Germans did. So to have a statue of a man who literally fought and murdered Americans is an affront to this country. So watch out who you're rooting for. By the way, he was a slaveholder. He was vicious to his slaves. He personally whipped them and then would pour toxins into their skin afterwards. He separated families. Maybe that's why Donald Trump likes him and some of Donald Trump's supporters like him. He was notorious for that. He was just, when they captured black soldiers in the Civil War, his troops murdered them on the spot at the Battle of the Crater. He would not trade black soldiers for white soldiers. And then whoever they captured, they would parade through southern towns as people spit on him and insulted him. So putting up a Robert E. Lee statue is a spit in the face of America.
Juan Carlo is next from New Jersey, an independent. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, Cenk. Thanks for having me on. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, first of all, thanks for pointing out what a heinous human being Robert E. Lee was, and by comparison, everybody who supported him at that event, as you described. But I just wanted to say something quickly about Biden's video. Notice the tone. Notice what he's trying to do. He's trying to garner that same, I am the person who will make all the issues that came in 2016. I will make them go away. That kind of bandwagoning, that kind of fallacious emotional appeal, that's something we need to be aware of. And I think going forward, you also mentioned, Cenk, how Buttigieg is, really coming hard on this value edge, this value appeal to people. We have to be wary of that going into the debates. We have to understand that the issues we face now, we need solid policy proposals to solve them. And emotional appeals, yes, they garner support, but they're not going to get that job done. So going into debates, we need to see what kind of policy proposals the candidates are coming out with. And we've seen a couple already. And, that being said, with the kind of values that I have, I'm supportive of the kind of things that Elizabeth Warren has brought out so far.
What's the best proposal you've seen?
I mean, we have to understand first and foremost that educating America will alleviate people from misunderstanding the supporters of Charlottesville as good people or very fine people. So her taking action to cancel the crippling student loan debt that is bubbling at a rate that we had, seen only, before the financial crisis. It's serious, and we need to do something serious to tackle it, just as we need serious action to tackle the climate crisis. This is a crisis as well, and it's also about educating America. So that being said, that is something I am absolutely behind, and I am going out and talking to people about it because, like I said, we need strong policy proposals here.
Carla, thanks for the call.
Yeah, so fantastic points all across the board. In terms of Joe Biden, he's basically saying, let's go back to a time before Donald Trump, the good old days when me and Obama ran the country. Well, let's be honest about that. So was Barack Obama a good steward of the economy? Yes. Was he a good president? I would argue yes. But did we fix the underlying problems in this country? Absolutely not. Wages are still flat. They've been flat for the American worker for over 40 years. So the top 1% recovered, the top 10% arguably recovered, but the bottom 90% are still flatlining. And it was a situation bad enough that it got Donald Trump elected. So I don't really want to go back to a state that was so bad that the American people in their utter desperation turned to a clown like Donald Trump. So no thanks to the overall message of Joe Biden in that sense. When Buttigieg talks about values, what do you mean values? We all have, I hope, the same progressive values. We don't want to let any kids die if they don't have health insurance, etc. But I think that what he's referring to is what a lot of corporate donors in the Democratic Party like. They're good people. They don't want to have gay people have less rights than straight people, or having African Americans getting shot, and immigrants being separated at the border. So those are all good values. But a lot of the corporate donors say, on top of that, I don't want my taxes increased, and I don't want too much regulation. So they say I'm socially liberal, but I'm economically conservative. Well, then we don't really share your values, because we believe that the country is going to be way better off if we are also progressive on economic issues, because that helps the entire country and not just the top 10%.
Define socialism.
Thank you for asking. I really appreciate that. Everybody's having a conversation about socialism without ever defining it. The reality is we all live in a mixed economy. So even talk of socialism or capitalism, I think, is misplaced. So what is the difference between the United States and a socialist country like Norway? The difference is they provide health insurance and we don't. Wow, what a giant difference. Now, look, there's some other things around the edges. They're far better to people who are detained in their prisons, for example, in Norway, and they have a recidivism rate that's much lower. Finland has a top-notch education system that's public, and they don't allow private schools. So there's some tiny issues around the edges, but overall, it's pretty much the same economy. So the big argument that the so-called anti-socialist capitalists have is, oh yeah, we would ruin America if we all had health insurance and nobody's kids died. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't ruin America. And they never acknowledge the socialist programs we have. In fact, the ones that are the most popular in the country. Social Security, socialist. Medicare, socialist, polling at 84% and 77%. Medicaid, also very popular, about 70%, also socialist. You know what else is socialist? The United States military. It's one of the biggest socialist programs we have. I don't know if the knuckleheads on the right wing realize it, but it is run by the United States government. Also the police force, the fire department, all socialist.
President Trump and those in his administration talking about socialism quite a bit in recent weeks. This is the Vice President, Mike Pence, at the NRA convention on Friday. This is what he had to say.
As the President has said before, it's a battle between independence and government control. And ultimately, it's a battle between freedom and socialism. You know, under the guise of the Green New Deal and Medicare for all, the same Democrats that want to take away your freedom openly advocate a failed economic system that has robbed the liberty and impoverished millions of people around the world. But let's be clear. It was freedom, not socialism, that gave us the most prosperous economy in the history of the world.
Well, it's both incredibly unintelligent and demagoguery at its finest. So, what, if we have universal health care coverage, somehow we're not free anymore? What a laughable proposition. What a stupid thing to say. So right now, there's 28 million people that are uninsured in the country. If their kids get cancer, they can't go to the emergency room. You know what happens? They die. Monsters like Mike Pence says, yes, so what if they can't afford insurance? Let the kid who has cancer die. Now, we decided, we used to have private fire departments in this country, a long time ago. We decided it was a really bad idea, because if it turns out you don't have fire insurance or your neighbor doesn't, the whole neighborhood's going to burn down anyway, and we're not going to let kids die in a fire. But to this day, this system says, if your kid gets cancer, you don't have insurance, I don't care. I'm not going to rush in and help him. I'm going to let him die. And that's who Mike Pence is. And you want to talk about freedom here? Let me talk to Mike Pence. Mike, what are you talking about? You love taking away people's freedom. You say, well, don't. Hey, if you're gay, you don't get to live the same lifestyle that the rest of us do. You don't get to have the same rights. You're not for freedom. You're against freedom. You hate freedom. You talk about big government. You want government so large, you're getting between a woman and her doctor, you're getting inside her. So a lot of these right-wing states are passing ultrasounds that are, look, the only way to say it is invasive, okay? And some of them do not make an exception for rape. So after a woman's been raped, they do a transvaginal ultrasound on her. That's mandated. You're inside our uterus, Mike Pence, and you're telling us you're in favor of small government? No, you're not. You're a giant hypocrite. I don't care about your so-called morality. I find you deeply immoral. And in a country like America, we're not led by mullahs or priests or rabbis. We are led by a United States Constitution that says you should not intermingle state and church. So I'm not interested in your interpretation of your church. Keep it at home.
Atlanta, Georgia's next. Derek, Democrat. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Glad to talk to you, Cenk. But the problem was with Obama and the Democrats and Pelosi was when they came into office, they bailed. Man, they could have waited and not helped the Republicans put in any kind of economical system that they wanted. They could have took a one-page bill and raised the minimum wage. They could have did all this, but they wanted to go and try to work with Republicans. Republicans don't care. They wrecked the economy up under Reagan. So when they get out of office, they put in the tax cuts. After Clinton got out, they put in tax cuts. Tax cuts when it's good, tax cuts when it's poor. They don't care about Republicans. They're going to serve their donors, just like Trump now is running a socialist government. He's bailing out the farmers. They do whatever they want to do when they get in office. They don't care. They don't listen to no Democrats. And the bottom line is Pelosi is working with them. She's going to talk to Trump Monday about an infrastructure. No, we want them out of office. They need to run on putting them out of office so they can put in their own type of plan.
Derek, got your point.
I actually think Derek's right on every front there. So I don't want Democrats who are going to come and tell me this. They've been telling me for 20, 30 years now, oh, we'd like to compromise with Republicans. I would not like to compromise with Republicans. I would like to defeat them. In fact, I'd like to crush them. So Mitch McConnell is not going to meet you halfway. Mitch McConnell is not going to change his mind if you're having a beer summit with him. It's not like, oh, wow, Coors Light, I'm in for policies that's going to help the American people. No, he does. He is the most corrupt man in Washington, even more corrupt than Donald Trump. And he only does what his donors tell him to do. There is no negotiation there. So Democrats, they've been so weak for so long. For God's sake, fight for your side. So go. Your job is not to appease Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump. Your job is to defeat them. Go and fight them and win. So, I mean, again, the caller's 100% right. What did Obama get for all of his concessions? He conceded preemptively so many times, including giving away the public option in the Affordable Care Act. And did he get a single Republican vote in return? No. They are never going to agree with you. They're paid not to agree with you. Wake up to the political reality. These people either don't know politics at all. Nancy Pelosi calls herself a master legislator. Hilarious. What on God's green earth have you passed? Oh, I got the Affordable Care Act passed. That was a Heritage Foundation plan, a right-wing plan, one that Romney put into place in Massachusetts, and you got it passed with super majorities. Wow. I didn't know you were that good at legislating. Okay, show me an actual progressive proposal that you've gotten passed or even introduced. She's actively fighting all progressive proposals using right-wing talking points and going over to negotiate with Donald Trump. Stop it, man. Actually fight for us for a change, and they never do.
Lynchburg, Virginia is next. Richard, Republican, good morning.
How are you doing today?
Doing well. Go ahead. You're on with Cenk Uygur.
Well, I've been listening to everybody talking, and gosh, it kind of threw me, all this stuff. Everybody is against everybody. It's such a shame. We need to get up in the morning and put our T-shirt and blue jeans on and go outside and just see what is out there for us. It's free. We need to stop talking and thinking about different people other than ourselves. Just everybody's the same. Everybody makes this world up. If we all don't come together, this world's going to go to the dogs. Let's quit talking about all the statues. I mean, if people want to bring them down, let them bring them down. Let's not riot and kill and murder people because of everything that you don't believe in. Let's all get together, hold hands, and get to work and make America better again. Let's just stop talking. The Senate and the Congress, they got their hands full, all these bills, all this paperwork. Let's just all of us go out and do something.
Okay, I appreciate the sentiment, actually, and I think that there's actually a pathway that we can get there where we're not always going to agree. Of course, it's a democracy, and we're not going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya all the time. On the other hand, we can actually get to a situation where we have honest disagreements. And instead of the Mitch McConnells of the world throwing up a wall, he just said a couple of days ago to call him the Grim Reaper and said he is going to obstruct every single proposal by a Democratic president. So why does he say things like that? I mean, normally, if you have a democracy, it's not a popular position to call yourself the Grim Reaper. But Mitch McConnell thinks, rationally so, I don't have to appeal to voters. I just have to appeal to donors. And I'm going to raise so much money, and then in my ads, I'll lie and pretend I'm on your side. The poison is money in politics. That means that all these politicians, almost the entirety of the Republican Party, and unfortunately a huge share of the Democratic Party, they work for their donors. Now, if they work for their voters, then we would actually have honest, decent conversations in this country and not be so divided. But if a donor says, I paid you for that position, then you're not open to different ideas. You're not open to different perspectives. The only thing that's open is your checkbook.
JK on Twitter wants me to ask you about Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang.
So I'm really interested in all options. So I've interviewed Tulsi a couple of times. Andrew Yang was on the Young Turks. In fact, I believe it was the first national media outlet that interviewed him. And he's going to come back on in about a week or so. So Does that mean that I think that they have positions that are better than Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren? Not necessarily, but it does mean that you should give everyone a chance. I mean, look, I told you earlier, I was very open-minded towards Beto and Buttigieg. I knew some of Kamala Harris's record, but not all. I encourage you to look into all their records. They've got a lot of good stuff in there, some stuff that I don't agree with perfectly, but that's normal. Give people a chance. If Mayor Pete rose up like he did, another candidate can too. I'm not saying that I'm definitely supporting those candidates. I'm just saying you should look into their policies and give them a fair hearing.
If folks want to watch that interview you just mentioned, how do they do that?
Yes, tyt.com is our website, also on youtube.com/tyt. And you can go there and we have, 60,000 videos, but you'll see our latest videos and you could type in Buttigieg or to get videos about him, but the interviews on Yang and Gabbard, you just type in their names and you'll see it.
Cenk Uygur with the Young Turks with us for about 15 more minutes this morning on the Washington Journal. Taking your calls as usual, phone lines, Democrats, Republicans, and independents. We'll go to the line for independents. Colin in Santa Monica, California. Good morning.
Good morning. So I used to be a progressive, and I'll just say it simply. To me, although it's a three-dimensional world, so left and right is ridiculous, but the American eagle has two wings. It needs both a left wing and a right wing to fly, like any bird. And when the right calls the left snowflakes, that may be rude, but when the left calls the right racist and sexist, it's pushing away a lot of people. And I'd be curious, and there's lots of examples of it. So I think there's a silent majority as much as your guest is excited, and I applaud his work in a lot of ways. I think there's a silent majority of people who've been silenced by the bullies coming out of the left, and I'd like to hear him calmly respond in an effort to give his side credibility and not push more people away. He's thrown out a lot of passionate comments today, but not backed it up with a lot of facts.
That's totally not true. I backed up every single thing I said with facts. Okay, so look, the right wing invented identity politics. First of all, it's called slavery. It's not like black people decided, hey, you know what? We think we'll have an advantage by calling people racist 200 years from now, so let's sign up for slavery. That is not what happened. What happened was white people imprisoned, slaved, lynched, killed, murdered, raped black people in this country. Now, am I saying that you're responsible for that sitting at home in Nebraska somewhere? No, we're not saying that. What we're saying is acknowledge that history, acknowledge that slavery was identity politics, Jim Crow was identity politics, discrimination was identity politics, and it's the white right wing that has been playing that game. So does that mean you should blame all white people? Of course not. And it doesn't mean you should blame them now, but you should acknowledge where all of this came from. So when Black Lives Matter says, could you please not shoot unarmed black men? That's not playing identity politics. Shooting black men at a disproportionate rate, that's identity politics, and that actually gets people killed. Look, white people and black people smoke marijuana at about the same rate. Black people are imprisoned at 4 times the rate. 4 times the rate. That's identity politics that robs them of their freedom, their liberty, destroys their lives. And when they push back and say, hey, could you not arrest us at 4 times the rate? Then people turn around and go, I can't believe they're playing identity politics. Stop putting them in prison unjustly. That's the identity politics. Look, the Republican Party did the Southern strategy, where their whole point was to go get racists in the South, to turn from the Democratic Party to the Republicans and vote for them. The 2 different heads of the RNC have apologized for the Southern strategy because it's real and its intent was racist. So when you build an entire political party on identity politics and white supremacy, don't be surprised when people push back and go, well, I'm not a white right-winger, so I'm not interested in that party because you seem to dislike people that are of my hue, race, religion, etc. And then, ironically, because conservatives love to be victims, that's their favorite thing. Oh my God, can you believe it? Somebody said Happy Holidays to me instead of Merry Christmas. You want to talk about a snowflake? I mean, that's as big a snowflake as you could possibly imagine. So when we say, can you please stop being so unfair to minorities in the country, they go, oh, now I'm the victim. You're playing identity politics. I was having fun institutionally discriminating against you all these years, and now you're going to ruin it by saying I should stop discriminating. I can't believe you're doing identity politics. I don't accept that. It's just not true.
Newport, North Carolina is next. Julie, a Democrat. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my call. I would like to make a comment, and first of all, I'd like to say that the first time I voted was 1 week after my 18th birthday in 1972, and I voted for George McGovern. Wonderful man, and I also worked for him. I'm concerned about Joe Biden running because I frankly think he's too old. I would like to see some of the younger candidates come up. They have really great ideas. I haven't zeroed in on anyone, and I will support whoever is the Democratic nominee. But I just feel that Mr. Biden needs to let the younger folks come along.
Julie, before you go, how old is too old to run for president?
Well, at this point in time, I think we have a lot of, forgive me, old white men in government. We need to get them out of government, and because they are so entrenched in their ideas. So I guess I'm thinking anybody over 60, and I'm 64.
Okay. So I have to respectfully disagree on that one. So I don't think it's their age that drives the issue of being old. The question is whether you have old ideas or not. And so Joe Biden, look, he's had some great votes and push for some progressive ideas. It's not a black and white world, and the people that are running that are not your favorite candidate are not evil. They're not bad people. But it's okay to disagree with them and vote against them because that's what a primary is for. But in terms of Bernie Sanders, he's about the same age as Joe Biden, but his ideas
slightly older, right?
Yeah, he's 1 year older. Okay.
Bernie Sanders 77, I believe. Biden 76.
Yes. So, like I said, 1 year difference. So it's not about the age, it's about the ideas. And Bernie Sanders' ideas now are ascendant. And then some people then use that ironically and say, well, then he should step aside. Wait, that makes no sense. If it's his ideas, why wouldn't you trust him the most to execute those ideas? And if I thought there was a copy of Bernie Sanders that was younger, maybe we have a conversation about that. But the reason people trust Bernie Sanders is because he's been saying the same thing and been principled for the last 40 years. So there's also an advantage in that. We know he didn't change his mind. This is what he's always been in favor of. So judge them based on their ideas and not necessarily any demographic issues like age.
By the way, we should note President Trump turning 73 in June. About 10 minutes left with Cenk Uygur. Promised we'd ask you about the Mueller report. You tweeted last week that after the report came out, you're now in favor of impeachment. Why?
Well, now we know for a fact that Donald Trump has broken 2 laws, clearly. There are dozens of other allegations, but there are only 2 that are crystal clear. So one before the Mueller report was campaign finance violations. His co-conspirator in that case is going to prison for 3 years. That's Michael Cohen. And if he was any other person, including a right-winger actually, Dinesh D'Souza went to prison for a very similar crime. It's a felony. And now after the Mueller report, we know that he did obstruction of justice. And Mueller said to Congress, you should take this matter up. So if Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats say we're not going to pursue those 2 felonies, I'm worried about the principle of the matter more than I am about the politics. That means that the president's above the law. That's a terrible precedent to set. I wouldn't do that under any circumstance.
Hillary Clinton's op-ed in the Washington Post this past week. Here's what she wrote. Congress should hold substantive hearings that build on the Mueller report and fill in its gaps, not jump straight to an up or down vote on impeachment. She says Watergate offers a better precedent. Then as now, there was an investigation that found evidence of corruption and a cover-up. It was completed by public hearings. It was complemented by public hearings conducted by a Senate Select Committee, which insisted that executive privilege could not be used to shield criminal conduct and compelled White House aides to testify. The televised hearings added to the factual record and, crucially, helped the public understand the facts in a way that no dense legal report could.
Yeah, I don't agree, and I'll tell you why. It's kicking the can down the road. So you're going to do more hearings if it turns out you've got, what, 3 crimes, 8 crimes? How many crimes would it take to impeach? I say 2 is plenty. And we've got a petition up, tyt.com/impeach, because you got to get going. And I think that what Nancy Pelosi said was Donald Trump's been really good for Democratic fundraising. And so I think they want to just keep up the hearings to do their fundraising. We've got plenty of evidence. He clearly broke those laws. Let's impeach.
Time for a few more calls to Indiana, where Dennis is waiting. Line for Republicans. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question for this, whatever you want to call him here. He's always talking about the morality of the Republicans not wanting to give insurance to children and stuff, but I bet you, being a progressive here, that he has absolutely no problems with the slaughter of innocent children in the womb. How would you like to answer that question?
I would love to answer that question. You should read your own Bible. You know, the Bible is pro-abortion. Read Numbers. In Numbers, it says if you think your wife cheated on you, give her a toxic potion. And if she did cheat on you, she will have a miscarriage. In other words, God will perform an abortion. I didn't write that. God wrote that. Read your own Bible. So it's not pro-life. It's not even pro-choice. The Bible is pro-abortion. So all of this is built on a total mythology. And Dennis, we live in America, not in Saudi Arabia. So if you don't mind, I don't really care what your religious beliefs are. And they're certainly not going to dictate what I do in my life. You know why? Because I believe in freedom. And you apparently don't. So if I said to you, you have to follow my religious laws, my guess is all of a sudden you'd be screaming, freedom, freedom, right? Why do I have to follow your religious laws? I'm not in your religion. I know that's a really sad day for you, but I'm not. And so are hundreds of millions of Americans are not in your religion. So I don't, one, you have your own religion wrong, massively wrong. And you built a whole political party around being wrong, okay? And secondly, I don't care what your religion is. And third of all, you guys claim that you're for small government, then go, oh, no. I'm going to decide what you do with your body. I'm going to do this, this, and this. The reality is, I believe the Supreme Court got the at least policy of it right, which is that if a baby is viable outside the womb, then it is an independent human being, and the state must protect it. But if it is not viable outside the womb, it is dependent on the mom, and the mom gets to make the decision. And that's actually what drives you guys crazy. Why did you purposely misinterpret the Bible to take away women's rights? Because in a lot of those old documents, including the Bible, women are property. And so you treat them as such. Well, we have no interest in that today. So we don't agree, and we'll fight back.
Did want to get your thoughts on the Attorney General appearing on Capitol Hill this week. Some news, CNN reporting this morning, William Barr, the Attorney General, has warned Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee that he won't show up to this week's hearing if they stick by the format that the chairman has proposed for the questioning, according to a committee source, although it's still possible they could reach a deal before Thursday. Of course, William Barr expected to also testify before the Republican-controlled Senate Judiciary Committee on Wednesday.
Yeah. So, as usual, Republicans are hypocrites. They demanded that the Obama administration go in front of them, what was it, 8 or 9 investigations on Benghazi, and the first 7 cleared them. And the 8th also cleared them. And if they had a 9th, that also cleared them. But the Democrats kept going back and going back and going back. And why did the Republicans do that? For politics. Now we have a legitimate issue of law breaking. The president is a criminal. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, participating with Congress, no way, I'm not going to do that. They call it presidential harassment. What the hell does that mean? Have they ever read the Constitution? Have they ever read the First Amendment? It's called freedom of the press. It's not called, there is no such thing as presidential harassment. That's made up because Donald Trump's a snowflake.
To West Nyack, New York, David is a Democrat. Good morning.
Hi. I think they got my name wrong. It's actually Luke. I was really angry. I was talking to some of my friends who say we need a bold centrist to go against Trump, and I don't agree with that at all. I believe Trump is as right-wing as you could get. I believe Pete Buttigieg is the bold progressive we need. And people can say we won't be able to get anything through Congress, but if you look at bold progressives like my own Nita Lowey, who can get the sludge through Congress, I think it's very clear that bold progressives can get things done in Congress.
Cenk Uygur.
Yeah. Well, obviously I agree. I mean, I'm amused by the idea of a bold centrist. I'm going to boldly stand right in the middle of the road. Actually, that might be bold. No, I don't find the corporate Democrats to be bold at all. Oh, look at that. I took a donor check just like the Republicans did. And it turns out, yeah, you need to cut taxes. That's fine. Drug companies, you want to make sure that the American government can't negotiate with you? That's fine. So I don't find that bold. I find it sad. And so if you're looking for a bold progressive, I love that you're doing that.
Last call for you, Lynn. North Carolina, Republican, go ahead.
Yes, I would like to ask this fella, what is his authority to sit up here and spew all that's hateful? All Republicans are racist. Do you live in my household? Do you know me? You cannot sit there and tell everybody I'm a racist so people will come and attack me. Y'all are the problem. Y'all are the ones that's spewing all this hate and dividing everybody.
Lynn, do you support Donald Trump?
Well, we need to go. Yes, I like Donald Trump.
Well, that's why we think you're racist. Look, Lynn, do you get it? The guy after they found out the Central Park Five, the 5 black kids in Central Park did not commit the rape, he said, who cares? Keep him in prison anyway. They probably did something. He's a terrible guy. I mean, you want to talk about anti-Semitism, very fine people on the side chanting, Jews will not replace us. He says we should ban all Muslims. Well, that's bigotry by definition. He said it during the campaign trail over and over again. Called Latinos criminals and rapists. So if you're on board for that, you should look in the mirror if you're trying to find a racist.
Lynn, we're running out of time, but give you a chance to respond if you want.
Right now on the TV, you are the racist. You are. And you have no right to say this.
No, I do have a right. See, you're used to Republicans being strong on television and Democrats cowering. New day in America. We don't play that game. Progressives, we actually fight back. So you can call me racist based on what? Okay, I never said anything about white people. I said right-wingers and people who support Donald Trump. That's why I gave you the benefit of the doubt. I asked you if you support Trump. Because I'm judging you by your ideas, by the people that you're backing. I'm not doing it blindly, and I'm definitely not doing it based on your race. But it's Donald Trump that makes assumptions about race over and over and over again, all based on the stereotypes these guys sitting in the back of his head. And so when those people in Puerto Rico needed help, he didn't give them the help, and he called them lazy. That's because he's a racist. He's had that stereotype about Puerto Ricans his whole life. And guess what? It cost thousands of lives down there because we didn't get them help enough. That is actually policy. That makes a difference. Those people died. When we say, hey, we're worried that he didn't take action because of his stereotypical way of thinking about Puerto Ricans, that's not racism. That's saying, for God's sake, go help those people, and we're worried that you're not because of your racial attitudes. So you don't get to cry victim after you abuse every other race in this country, and we push back and say, could you please stop doing that? And you can't then go, oh my God, you're so racist for pointing out my racism and the systemic way that we have crushed minorities in this country. No deal. No deal. New day in America. This time we fight back.
Cenk Uygur is founder and host of the Young Turks. On Twitter, it's @the Young Turks. Appreciate your time. Come back again.
Thank you so much.